Hello, everyone. Good evening. I am coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada, in our final speech of the quarter. I hope this finds anyone who will listen as part of the audience well. I hope everyone made it to the end with me to week 8 in just as good of a mood as I'm in, and just very happy that we all had this experience together. However, for my final speech with everyone, I did save to what I consider to be the most important topic that I have discussed and used this quarter, and to hopefully persuade anybody who's been on the fence with this issue or thinking that maybe one person's voice is lost in the echo of hundreds of millions. I hope that something can be taken away from this and you feel otherwise about 6 minutes from now. I am talking about the fundamental right to vote for every American 18 or over who, as some of you might already know, has not been possibly convicted of a felony and lost their right to vote or something like that. This is something that a lot of people take for granted so soon after women, for example, just gained the right to vote recently. African Americans, so recently after those people gained the right to vote, many people have just abandoned use of that right. And it's very interesting to me. And throughout this speech, I'll hope to provide some examples of how just a few votes have mattered in elections that have taken place in our country during our lifetimes, possibly. How other people in other countries feel when they don't exist in a culture or a society with this right, and how this may have even been a factor in our most recent election within the last 12 months. The year 2000 was very interesting in terms of politics. There's a lot of public information about this. The U.S. Election Atlas was a great source that I found, for example, that showed interesting things happening in Florida in the year 2000. This also happened to overlap with an assignment that I was doing in an MBA class I'm taking at the school right now, the other class I'm taking with COM 110, our speech class. It's a class called Managerial Analytics. It's the first MBA class I've taken in the MBA program, and we just did a study on the year 2000 election in Florida for a homework assignment last week. And we were showing in at least one county where the presence of Pat Buchanan as a third candidate actually was enough to sway for one candidate where it would have gone to the other candidate, and we're talking a matter of about 23 votes. So you have one instance where just that few number of votes actually mattered in one of those elections that was actually in the 21st century. And I'm sure if you asked a lot of people on the street, maybe in the state of Florida a month or two before that election, there probably would have been a lot more than 23 people that would have said, well, my vote really doesn't count. One vote doesn't matter. I'm going to stay home. And that's the point of this example, that in the year 2000, we can actually show from the numbers, from the U.S. Election Atlas, from some other public sources, from information given to me in my graduate class, that this actually did happen and did matter. And when it does matter so much, and people from outside these borders actually see it mattering so much, that's where the second topic I introduced in the introduction comes into play. That's where we see other people from other countries observing that so many of us take this right for granted, and they may make their own conclusions about wishing that they had that right and not being able to believe that we actually don't exercise it sometimes. For example, there are a lot of situations in other countries around the world, as can be seen in the Brunswick News, which I found on the Stafford Library at our school, that details all of the sham elections held in other countries all around the world. A lot of dictatorships we've actually had conflicts with in the last 10 years or so, such as Libya with Gaddafi, Iraq, some Southeast Asian countries, few Middle Eastern countries. A lot of these countries sometimes have sham elections where the quote-unquote dictator will receive 100% of the vote. So one would have to wonder, at least I wonder, if it's better or worse or not to be denied the right to vote, or denied the right to vote through basically a sham election being thrown in my face as real but not real and hoping to appease me. I'm not sure what I would find more frustrating if I lived in one of those countries where I didn't have this right. But what happens when we fail to exercise our right is I'm sure that a lot of these people in these other countries might just stand there in disbelief and shock that we don't exercise it, knowing what they could be going through. Even as recently as this past election, this was proven in the state of Georgia, for example, that this right matters incredibly so. And these people from these other countries, when judging us possibly in that way, might have the right idea. There is some fantastic public information from the Georgia Secretary of State's office that actually revealed this possibly about Donald Trump himself. There was some data that even came out from this past election that showed that so many registered Republicans voted in the Republican primary that so many less of those Republicans came to vote in the general election that it directly impacted Donald Trump winning. And it's possible that his own speech in public, his own rhetoric, suppressed enough of those votes, suppressed enough of those registered Republicans that it was enough to tilt the scales and give the state of Georgia to Joe Biden. I want to take a second to explain that again during this speech. The Georgia Secretary of State was actually saying that numbers indicate that Donald Trump could have suppressed his own vote where he caused enough Republicans to stay home that had voted in the primary. Enough Republicans stayed home and didn't vote in the general election because of his words that it was enough to cause Joe Biden to win. So even in the state of Georgia, this time, the most recent election, we saw that such few votes made a difference. Even a candidate suppressing his own votes was enough to make a difference. It's possible that there's enough people that didn't vote in the state of Georgia that didn't know that this would occur, obviously, that if they would have known, they would have voted and things might have been different. You never really know. These examples all basically make the same point. They make the point that in conclusion today, we've seen some wonderful information that tells us that the right to vote is fundamentally integral to our freedom, to our society, to something that we should do every time we get the chance, especially in a general presidential election. It is not something we should take for granted. A lot of people choose not to own guns, not to own weapons, firearms, arms, so to speak, even though the Second Amendment is there. A lot of people choose not to exercise that right. I personally do not believe that voting is one right you should not exercise, even though you have it. I personally believe we all should. Today we've talked about a number of reasons why we should, and I hope that some of you in the future that haven't voted in the past will possibly let me know, if you're in this class with me, that something I've said today that you've heard has inspired you to do so. Thanks everybody so much, anybody listening. Thanks to our teacher. I've had a wonderful quarter. It's been great to do this with all of you, to get comfortable in front of the camera, and I wish all of you the best of luck. I only have 3 classes left to graduate after this one. I hope everybody gets as close as I am and finishes just like me soon as I can. I can't wait. It's been a long time. It's been a long time coming, and I hope all of you are as inspired as me and finish as strongly as I hope to. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your summer.